At 11:43 p.m., the security camera caught her running barefoot down the marble hallway, wedding ring still on her finger, blood on the sleeve of her silk gown. A gunshot echoed through the estate. By midnight, the footage was gone, and by morning, the only man who could explain what happened was dead. But that's not where this story begins. It begins with a wedding that looked like a fairy tale. The first time Elena Hart saw Daniel Calloway, he was shaking hands beneath a chandelier shaped like falling stars. He was the youngest state senator in the country, son of Governor Robert Calloway, a man whose name built highways, hospitals, and enemies. Elena was a public school teacher with student loans and a second-hand car that stalled in the rain. He noticed her anyway. 6 months later, she married into power. The first crack appeared 3 weeks after the honeymoon. It was subtle. A late-night phone call Daniel took outside, a locked study he told her not to enter, a staffer who flinched when Elena asked simple questions. Then came the envelope. No return address, no note, just photographs, blurry, grainy, taken from far away. Daniel stepping into a warehouse near the docks at 2:13 a.m. Daniel shaking hands with a man later identified as Victor Salazar, a contractor under federal investigation. Daniel standing beside a black SUV registered to a shell corporation. Elena's hands trembled. When she confronted him, Daniel didn't yell. He smiled. "You don't understand how this world works," he said softly. "These are strategic relationships." Strategic, that word would haunt her. 2 months later, investigative journalist Marcus Reed was found dead in his apartment. Official cause, suicide. Unofficial rumor, he'd been digging into misappropriated development funds, millions routed through private contractors connected to the governor's office, connected to Daniel. Elena remembered something then. The night before Marcus died, Elena had woken up at 11:43 p.m. Daniel wasn't in bed. She'd walked down the hallway, the same hallway the security camera would one day record her running through, and heard his voice in the study. "Handle it," he'd said, "before this spirals." At the time, she'd convinced herself it meant a press statement. Now she wasn't so sure. A car that followed her but never passed. A parent at school whispering, "You should tell your husband to stop what he's doing." An anonymous text, "You don't know who you married." Elena tried to leave once. She packed a suitcase, called her sister. Daniel stood in the doorway, calm as ever. "You walk out that door," he said gently, "and the press will destroy you. They'll say you're unstable, that you had an affair, that you leaked state secrets." She stared at him. "You wouldn't." He stepped closer. "My family didn't build this legacy by being naive." That was the moment she realized something chilling. Daniel didn't see himself as corrupt. He saw himself as necessary. The night everything shattered was supposed to be a celebration, a private fundraiser at the Calloway estate. Senators, judges, billionaires. Elena wore a silver gown Daniel had chosen. She played her role perfectly, until she overheard the argument. It came from the study. Marcus Reed's name, an audio recording. "Destroy it," a voice ordered. "I can't. It implicates..." The rest was muffled. Elena's pulse pounded. She slipped upstairs and found the locked drawer in Daniel's desk slightly open. Inside was a flash drive, no label, just a strip of red tape. She didn't think, she took it. And at 11:43 p.m., someone realized it was missing. The shouting started first, Then the crash of something heavy hitting the floor. Elena ran, barefoot, heart racing. She almost made it to the side exit before she heard the gunshot. One, sharp, deafening. Silence followed, and somewhere in that silence, a decision was made. By midnight, security footage was erased. By 12:07 a.m., a call was placed to state police. By morning, Governor Robert Calloway stood before cameras, grief-stricken. My son was a complicated man, but he was not a criminal. Daniel Calloway was pronounced dead at 1:13 a.m.
Official cause: self-inflicted gunshot wound. Case closed. Except Elena knew something no one else did. Daniel had been standing across the room when the gunshot went off. She had seen his face, confused, afraid, and very much alive. When security dragged her back inside, the body on the floor wasn't Daniel. It was Victor Salazar, the contractor, the scapegoat. Daniel was gone, vanished before sirens arrived, and the man declared dead on national television had never died at all. The next morning, Elena sat in the same marble hallway where she'd run hours earlier. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single message. "You were never supposed to see that." Attached was a photo, not of Daniel, not of Victor, but of Elena, standing over the body, from an angle that suggested premeditation, framing. The narrative was already being written, and she was at the center of it. By evening, whispers began online. Did she know? Was she involved? Gold digger turned killer? The Calloway legal team released a statement expressing deep concern over Elena's mental state. She understood then, the price of marrying into power wasn't luxury, it was silence. And if you refused to stay silent, you became disposable. But here's what they didn't know. Before security took her phone, Elena had done one thing right. She'd sent the contents of the flash drive to someone she trusted, someone outside the Calloway circle. And that person had just texted her back. This isn't just corruption. This is federal. Elena looked up as black SUVs pulled into the driveway again. Not state police, different insignia, different authority. And stepping out of the lead vehicle was Daniel, alive, calm, and staring directly at her, as if daring her to speak. The story that should have ended with a wedding didn't. Daniel Calloway was supposed to be dead. The world had mourned him. News anchors had lowered their voices. His father had wept on cue. But as the black SUV door opened and Daniel stepped out alive, Elena understood something chilling. The death had never been an ending. It had been a strategy. The federal agents didn't look surprised to see him. That was the first thing that unsettled her. They moved with quiet coordination, surrounding the estate not like men discovering a crime scene, but like men executing a plan. Daniel adjusted his tie as he walked toward her, calm, controlled. "Elena," he said softly, as if they were alone, "you shouldn't have taken it. The flash drive, the red tape, the truth." She didn't answer, because she finally understood the game. Victor Salazar hadn't been a scapegoat, he had been a liability, and Daniel's death had served two purposes: erase suspicion, reset the narrative. When a powerful man dies, investigations soften, sympathy clouds scrutiny, files close faster. But a resurrection? That was leverage. Inside the house, agents sealed off rooms, phones were confiscated, staff were separated. One of the agents, a woman with sharp eyes and a badge that read Special Agent Torres, approached Elena quietly. "You sent the files?" she asked. Elena nodded once. Torres didn't smile. "Good, because what's on that drive isn't just corruption. It was worse. The flash drive contained financial records spanning 8 years, shell companies tied to state infrastructure contracts, campaign donations laundered through nonprofits, offshore accounts routed through 3 countries. But buried deeper was something far darker. Audio files, unedited, time-stamped. Marcus Reed's voice. "I have proof the governor authorized the diversion of emergency housing funds." A pause. A second voice. "Daniels, you were warned." The recording ended with a sharp crack. Not a gunshot. A struggle. Then silence. Marcus Reed hadn't taken his own life. He had been silenced, and the order traced back not just to Daniel, but to Governor Robert Calloway.
Stories like this don't end when the headlines fade. If you want more real stories about love, power, and betrayal, subscribe. The federal agents weren't there to protect Daniel. They were there because someone had already flipped. The unexpected witness? Daniel's chief of staff, a man loyal for years until he realized he too might become disposable. He'd handed over internal emails, encrypted backups, schedules that placed Daniel and Victor together the night Marcus died. And the staged shooting? That had been the final move. Victor planned to cooperate, so they arranged a confrontation. Only something had gone wrong. Victor fought back. The gun discharged. Daniel panicked. The governor intervened. A body was repurposed into a narrative. But they hadn't accounted for Elena. They had never believed she would look beyond the surface, that she would choose truth over protection. In the days that followed, the country watched in disbelief. Governor Calloway was indicted on charges of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and financial fraud. Daniel was arrested on suspicion of accessory to murder and evidence tampering. The footage of his death was dissected frame by frame on national television. Experts pointed out inconsistencies, shadows that moved before the gunshot, a figure exiting through a side door. The illusion unraveled. But power does not collapse quietly. The Calloway legal team went on the offensive. They painted Elena as unstable, claimed she'd stolen sensitive materials out of paranoia, leaked rumors of marital problems, suggested jealousy, suggested motive. And for a moment, it worked. Talk shows debated her credibility. Online forums turned vicious. She became the woman who betrayed her husband, not the woman who exposed him. Then, Agent Torres released the final piece. Transfers made the morning after Daniel's staged death. $42 million shifted from a disaster relief fund into an offshore account, authorized using Daniel's credentials, time-stamped 2 hours after he was declared deceased. Dead men don't move money. That single detail shattered the defense. The trial lasted 6 months. Testimony revealed a pattern stretching back a decade. Intimidation disguised as negotiation, bribes labeled as consulting fees, threats delivered in whispers. Marcus Reed's final article draft was read aloud in court. It detailed how emergency housing money meant for displaced families had been siphoned into luxury development projects tied to Calloway donors. Families who had lost everything, used as currency. Elena sat through every day of testimony. She never looked at Daniel, but once, just once, she felt his eyes on her. Not angry, not pleading, cold, as if calculating whether she had been worth the risk. The verdict came on a gray Thursday afternoon. Guilty, on multiple counts. Governor Robert Calloway was sentenced to 25 years. Daniel received 18. As the courtroom emptied, cameras flashing, Elena stepped outside into a crowd divided between cheers and accusations. Some called her brave, others called her disloyal, but none of them knew the quiet cost. Because justice does not erase memory. It does not erase love,
and it does not undo the nights she spent wondering whether the man she married had ever truly existed. Months later, Elena returned to teaching. Different school, different city. She removed her wedding ring for the last time and placed it inside a small wooden box, not as a symbol of regret, but as evidence. Evidence that charm can camouflage cruelty, that power can distort morality, and that silence is often the final demand. The story that should have ended at the altar didn't. It continued through courtrooms and headlines and prison bars. It ended not with a gunshot, but with a choice. Elena could have stayed quiet. She could have protected the name, protected herself. Instead, she exposed the truth and paid the price in reputation, safety, and the illusion of the life she thought she had married into. Because sometimes love isn't blind, it's manipulated. And sometimes injustice survives not because it's unbeatable, but because no one inside the walls dares to speak. This time, someone did, and that changed everything. If you believe love should never require silence in the face of corruption, would you have exposed Daniel too? If you believe loyalty matters more than truth, should Elena have protected her husband instead? If this story shook you, let me know in the comments. I read them all. Share this video with someone who believes the truth always comes out. And subscribe to this channel for more chilling true crime stories about love, power, betrayal, and injustice. Because some stories should have ended, but didn't.